Hi, I'm Marie, and today I'm here with a book haul. I do book hauls at the end of every season, so I'll leave the link in the description to the book hauls that I've done previously this year. There are two of them, but these are the books that I have bought or received between the start of June and now, which is the end of August. There are a few of them, but not as many as I was afraid there would be. So I'm I'm going to try and describe them as best I can to you, but most of them I haven't read yet. But we'll just cross that bridge when we come to it. I'll also probably leave links to all the Goodreads entries for these books, just in case you're interested in a bit more information. Let's just dive in. First, this is Black Leviathan by Bernard Purples, I want to say. I received this book in the Unplugged Mystery Box. Yes, the Unplugged Mystery Box that I bought in, I want to say June or May. Either way, the book arrived in June. And this is a fantasy about, I'm going to assume dragons, because there's a massive dragon on the cover, and the tagline of the book is "Here be dragons." I know it's a translated work. I think the author is Swedish. No, he's German. And the translator is American. So I don't really know anything about this apart from the fact that there's a dragon on the front. And when I requested the box, I asked for a fantasy adult book, and this is what I got. So I am looking forward to this one. I have been meaning to get to it for a while, and I just haven't gotten around to it because I've been busy, but hopefully this is a good one when I finally do get to it. This is Book of Night by Holly Black. It's my current read, so I do know a little bit more about this one, although not much. This is Holly Black's first adult novel. I read one of her young adult books when I was a teenager, and I tried to read The Cruel Prince a couple of years ago, but I ended up DNFing it because it just wasn't my vibe at the time. But I might go back and give it another go and see how I feel about it the second time round. Regardless, this is the Owl Crate edition. Yeah, this was the Owl Crate special edition, which is mostly why I bought it, I won't lie. I just thought it was really pretty. And the edges are stained black, so I decided to buy it because it looked nice. I'm only about 50 pages into this one, and I'm not gonna lie, nothing has really happened yet. I'm kind of waiting for it to sort of kick off and do something. But so far, what I know is that the main character's name is Charlie, and she's sort of got like this criminal background past. And she's part of this world. Well, it's the modern world. It's an urban fantasy. It's contemporary, and magic has been discovered in the recent past. So there are, I think they call them glomists, who are able to manipulate people's shadows and remove them from people, and do sort of dark, weird magic things with them. That's basically all I've picked up at this point. There was a guy that Charlie found who had been murdered while she was walking home from work late one night. I'm going to assume that's going to come back at some point, but as of right now, nothing has really happened. It's been a lot of sort of talking about what the world is like, and Charlie going about her daily routine, which is fine. Like I've enjoyed Charlie as a character so far, but I would like a bit more plot movement at this point. But you know, like I said, I'm only 50 pages in. Not that the book is very long. I think it's only about 300 and something. So there isn't a huge amount of space, but the plot could kick off in the next 5 pages for all I know. I just have to get there. I'm hoping to finish this one by the end of August, but we'll see how I go with that. I bought Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is a beautiful edition. I think it was a Barnes & Noble one, although I did buy it in Australia. Yeah. Barnes & Noble. I listened to the audiobook for Dracula in, I want to say February, and I really only listened to it because I had heard that Bram Stoker wrote it in response to Oscar Wilde's trial and imprisonment. So that's why I decided to listen to Dracula, because I love Oscar Wilde. And it turns out that Dracula is actually a really good book, just on its own. So when I saw this edition in a bookshop, I decided that I should buy it, because I'd really like to read it again at some point. And you know, if you're going to have a book that you reread, you might as well have a nice one. At least that's the way I feel about it. So it's this really nice, soft red cover. The pages are stained black. It's got one of those like ribbon bookmarks that always makes me feel super fancy. So that's a great edition. I'm very pleased to have this one. Next I have Empire of Ivory, Victory of Eagles, and Tongues of Serpents, all by Naomi Novik. These are books 4, 5, and 6 in her Tamarra series, which I already own. That's the thing that's the important point. I already own all 9 books in this series, but they're being re-released with these amazing new covers. They're so beautiful. I wish you could appreciate them in person. They're sort of watercolor pencil type illustrations, and the spines are forming like a dragon picture, which is really cool. I decided when I saw the first set of 3, they're being released in sets of 3, so there are 3 more books to come after these ones. But when I saw the first set of 3, I decided that I loved them so much that I had to replace my current series. So as each set is being released, I'm buying them and donating my previous copies. So if you're unfamiliar, the Tamarra series is basically the Napoleonic War with dragons. It starts with Captain William Lawrence of the Navy, the English Navy, British Navy. He and his ship attack a French frigate, and in the hold of that French frigate they discover a dragon egg, which is just on the verge of hatching. They take possession of that egg, it hatches shortly thereafter, and the dragon who comes out becomes named Tamarra, and he chooses Will Lawrence as his captain. So the dragons basically operate like naval ships, but they fly, obviously. There's a captain, they have lieutenants, they have crew, and it's basically this sprawling story about Tamarra and Lawrence and the adventures that they go on. What I love about this series in particular, apart from the characters who are great, is that the series basically spans the whole world. Like at some point, you know, they reach Australia, they visit South America. Obviously, they spend a lot of time in the UK and France mostly, but you know they go to all sorts of different places. So I'm recollecting the series with the new covers. But can you blame me? I mean, look at them. How gorgeous are they? I also have Sanderson by Jane Austen. I'm a bit of a Jane Austen fan, although I haven't read all her books yet. It's a work in progress. This edition, it's called Sanderson, but it does also include Lady Susan, which I have in another volume, but this one's got it too. There's also the Watsons, which I'm not super familiar with. I think it's part of a story that she might have started writing at one point. I don't know when. And then, of course, there's Sanderson, which is the novel that she was writing at the time of her death. So Lady Susan is a complete work, but it is the first book she wrote when she was, I think, 18. So it's not the same as her usual style, but the Watsons and Sanderson are incomplete, which is fine. You know, I knew that going in, but I'd still be very interested in reading them. Okay. Next, I have the collected poems of Oscar Wilde. As I mentioned before, I am quite a big Oscar Wilde fan. I've listened to several of his plays. I think probably the most famous one is The Importance of Being Earnest. And I've read The Picture of Dorian Gray, which is the only novel he wrote, which is a great shame. And I recently saw a stage production of it in Melbourne, which is fantastic. It's finished now, so sorry about that if you were hoping to see it, but it was great. Really, really interesting. But he also wrote poems. He's not known as a poet, really. He wrote fairy tales for children, and obviously the plays and the novel, which he's most famous for. But he did also write poems. And I have listened to a couple of them. I've certainly listened to The Ballad of Reading Gaol, which he wrote shortly after he was released from prison in, I think it was 1896 or 7, I want to say. So I've listened to that. It's the only work that he wrote after being released from prison. So I've listened to that. But this collection, I think, is more complete. I believe this is a complete collection of his poems, but I could be wrong. It's certainly very comprehensive, just looking at the contents page, but I don't know how many poems he wrote, or how extensive this collection is. Either way, I'm very interested to read his poetry. I don't read poetry at all, really, but being the fan of Oscar Wilde that I am, I've sort of made it a bit of a life goal to collect his life's work, I suppose, in various volumes. And if I'm going to do that, I need the poems too. So, next I've got Tokyo Ever After by Emiko Jean. This is one of the contemporary books I received in the Unplugged Christmas in July sale. They had leftover stock from the mystery boxes, and I asked for a YA contemporary and a adult contemporary. So this is the YA. I don't know much about this one. In fact, I don't know anything about this one apart from what I read in the blurb. It sounds basically like a version of The Princess Diaries, but the princess is Japanese American, and she finds out that she's got royalty in her family, and so she goes to Japan, but she doesn't really fit in anywhere. I love this cover. I'm hoping to read this one soon, but again, I don't know when I'm going to get to it. I've got a lot on and too many books to get through. But this sounds like fun. This sounds like fun. TheRehearsals by Annette Christie. This was the adult contemporary that I got in the Christmas in July sale. This sounds like a time loop story. So the two characters are getting married. Basically, they've been together for a long time. They're finally getting married, and then I think they have this sort of fight or falling out during the rehearsal dinner, and they decide to call the wedding off. But before that happens, they get stuck in a time loop, and they're reliving the day over and over again. And I guess at some point they're going to either decide to get married anyway, I'm going to assume that's how it ends, or they'll choose to go their separate ways. But yeah, I think this one sounds like fun. I'm not a huge fan of time loop stories, but I'm willing to be surprised. I received Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson in the June Adult Unplugged book. This is a fantasy about witches, basically. Queen Elizabeth I started I guess like a government department, you would call it, of witches, and this book is about 4 young women who swore an oath, I guess, to work for this coven, and then at some point along the way they had a falling out or got separated somehow, but from what the blurb says, when we reach them again, they're all doing different things, and there's someone else who's come in to start a different type of coven, which might be a threat to the old one. I'm not really sure. I don't really know anything about this book apart from the fact that it's got witches in it, and it just sounded really interesting, so I'm excited to read this one at some point. I don't know when I'm going to get to it, but I hope it's soon. Yeah, because it sounds like it could be a fun one. I received The Woman in the Library by Solari Gentile in the July adult box. Yes, that was the last one I received. So this came in the July adult unplugged box. This one's like a thriller, crime, mystery type, but it's a story within a story. So the story of the book is that there are 4 people in the Boston Library who are there in the reading room when a woman is murdered. And I think one of these 4 people, who don't know each other, but one of them is the murderer. And that's sort of the mystery that's unfolding. But that story is a story that's being written by a woman named Hannah. She lives in Australia, and she's communicating with a man named Leo who lives in Boston. So he's giving her information about the city and I suppose the Boston Library, which is where the murder takes place. And over the course of this correspondence, Hannah sort of decides or assumes that maybe Leo is a bit suspicious and possibly knows too much about murder for someone who's never committed one. I am not sure how I'm going to feel about this book when I finally get to reading it. I don't really read crime or mysteries or thrillers anymore. But, you know, I'm intrigued by the story within story structure, and I'm willing to give it a go. The author is Australian, so for no other reason than that, I'll definitely at least try this one. Next, I've got Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. And this is sort of a technicality, but I also bought The House in the Cerulean Sea. This is a library copy, which I read and loved a week or 2 ago, so I bought my own copy. It wasn't in stock, but it is arriving this week, so it definitely counts. But I also bought Under the Whispering Door, which I haven't had a chance to read yet, but I do own it now, and I will definitely read it hopefully soon. I feel like I say that about every book that I've held up, but I definitely want to read this one quite soon. And considering how quickly I was able to get through Cerulean Sea, I think I can probably knock this one out quite fast once I actually pick it up. I might try to get this one read after I finish Book of Night, but we'll see how we go. If you've not read House on the Cerulean Sea, you know, one of the 10 people left on the planet who haven't read this one yet, it's basically about a man named Linus Baker, who is a social worker with the department in charge of magical youth, and he is assigned to go visit a remote orphanage on an isolated island and investigate the children who live there. They're magical and unusual children, and as well as the master of the house, Arthur Parnassus. And it's basically about how Linus, I guess, comes to understand himself better and his place in the world based on his interactions with the children and with Arthur. And it's just a beautiful book. I loved it. It just gave me all the warm, fuzzy feelings, so I had to buy myself a copy. And while I was at it, I got Under the Whispering Door as well. I don't really know anything about this one. I haven't even read the blurb. I think it's about some guy who dies and after death forms a connection with someone who might be living or might also be dead. I don't really know, but I've become a bit of a fan of TJ Klune this year. I loved his Green Creek series, which was about werewolves. So I've been working through some of his other novels. I did try to read his other book, The Extraordinaries, in 2020, and I didn't like it, so I'm not going to read that series, but I'll certainly happily try this one. And now, last couple, I recently received the latest edition of Fence. So this is volume 5. Fence is a comic and graphic novel series by C.S. Cat, who also wrote the Captive Prince series, which I am obsessed with. But Fence it's basically like a sport anime. It's about Nick, who's this guy here. It's about Nicholas, who is a fencer, as in a, you know, like with the sword, a fencer, not someone who builds fences. And he goes to King's Row, which is sort of like a private school, and he has this goal of becoming the best fencer, I suppose, in the country, or at least in the local area. He sort of has a nemesis named, I think, Roger. I don't really remember, but I think his name is Roger, and or Robert or something. I know that he's blonde. I can't remember what his name is, but I remember that he's blonde. So that's the guy that Nick is trying to beat. He's also sort of got this thing going with Seiji, who is the best fencer around. And he is also arrived at King's Row to, I guess, boost the fencing team. He and Nick are roommates. They are complete opposites. They've sort of got a slow burn enemies to lovers thing going, and I just really love them so much. So this is the latest installment. I'm really excited to read this one, but I do think I'm going to reread the whole series first. It shouldn't take long. There were 13 comics, and there was one graphic novel before this one, so I can get through them really quickly. But yeah, this is the latest release. It came out like a week ago, and I jumped on it as soon as I saw it was out. I got online and ordered it, and it arrived really quickly. So yeah, this one I'm really excited to read and get back to these boys because they're so cute and they're so funny. If you love graphic novels and you love sports animes, definitely try this series out. Finally, I don't have anything to hold up for these, but I bought 2 ebooks this season. Bit touch and go. One was American Royalty by Tracy Livesay, I think is how it's pronounced. This is sort of like it's kind of a royal romance, which I think is partially inspired by Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, but I could be wrong. Basically, it's about this prince whose name I can't remember, and he meets this American rap / hip hop / R&B artist who goes by the name Duchess. And I think at some point they hit it off and have this unlikely relationship. I did start reading it in June, and I got 4% in, and I don't know if I can keep going. It's not the sort of thing that would bother a lot of other people, but the Queen of the UK, basically, her name is, I think, Marion, but she has a sister who's a princess, obviously, and the sister's name is Calliope, and they have a brother named Alcott, and I'm finding it very hard to get over that. Also the fact that the prince is somehow a college professor. I don't know, yeah, these are just little things that, like I said, would not bother other people. But to me, they just scream that the author didn't do even the basic research into any kind of royal family, let alone the British one, which is possibly the easiest royal family to do any kind of research into. So, yeah, I did start reading it in June, like I said. I have periodically thought about returning to it since then, but at this stage, I think it's probably going to be a DNF, and I just haven't admitted it to myself yet. But, I mean, if it sounds like something you'd be into, give it a go. I won't judge you. Finally, the last ebook, and the last book in this list is Top Priority by Cara D. And this is basically like an adult romance between two men. I think it might be like a BDSM slash Dom sub slash I don't really know what else. But I don't really know anything about it. It was free. It was free on Kobo, so I thought I would get it. I'm sort of constantly on the lookout for adult romances that are a good blend of spice and plot. I feel like often there's more spice and less plot, and that's not really the ratio that I'm looking for. But like I said, it was free, and I figured there was nothing to lose in grabbing it. So that one is quite a short book. I think it might be a novella, and I think the Kobo account says that it should only take like 2 hours to read. So I could probably fit that in quite quickly, but I just haven't gotten around to doing it. So hopefully that one will be fun when I get to it, and if not, at least it won't take long to get through. What a note to end on. Those are the books that I have bought in the last 3 months. Bit of a mixed bag, and also I haven't read most of them, but there's some good ones in there. Hopefully they're all good ones, but you know, they can't all be winners. I hope you enjoyed this little book haul, and I will see you next time, probably with another unboxing video.